I'm an actuarial leader by profession. I had a large team and all of that. So I had a huge burnout. Huge as in I was fainting on the road.
Oh, really?
I was waking up the next morning at home and wondering, how I came back. The doctor told me that you will have to take a break. And I was like, how will I live if I do not work? And he said, how will you work if you do not live? Everyone knows that they are born creative. If they are not, they're in denial. It's not that you have to get something from outside. Creativity is very much like that. It's inside us. We have to light that fire and put the torch in and see where our pleasure and our passion and our purpose all come together.
Hi everyone, yet another beautiful episode of Discover Your Second Act. We have heard so many people share their life stories here, but there is no end to life stories because there are so many lives that people are touching from their own stories. Today I'm very happy to welcome Sinjini Sengupta. She's the founder for Lighthouse. I have attended Sinjini's sessions on storytelling, and she says Lighthouse is that place. Especially when she thinks about a lighthouse, it is that what stands alone but yet provides so much to others. And that's exactly the reason that she incepted something so beautiful. She's in the space of telling leaders, have a heart in the boardroom, tell your story authentically, because there's nothing like being real. So welcome Sinjini, I'm so happy to have you, my dear. And it's, I would say, an honor to welcome another woman on this seat who is also doing so much work which is creating impact in people's lives. So welcome. It's a great day to have you.
Thank you so much, Archana, and you inspire us much, and I'm so glad to share this space with you.
Thanks, Sinjini. So, let's start from start. Why are you doing what you're doing?
Lovely, wonderful question. I feel that like we are all made of bone, blood and flesh, we are also made of story cells. At a metaphorical level, the stories that we are telling us about ourselves create the person who we are, the person we see in the mirror, the stories we are telling others about us. Some of it they believe, some of it they filter through their own angle, and then the stories that they tell about us when they are not in the room. I think that is how individuals are made, that is how characters are made, and that is also how decisions are made. As you mentioned, boardrooms, stakeholders, transactions, we are irrational people, but somewhere we are irrational enough to think that we will rationally explain everything. Doesn't work. And I have discovered it late, but I'm glad I discovered it, and when I discovered it, I felt like, oh my God, why isn't everybody talking about it? So more than a storyteller, I call myself a story evangelist, because I feel that once we understand this power we are holding, that we can tell ourselves better stories about ourselves, about the world, and we can tell other people stories that we consciously, deliberately want them to remember about us, the world changes. And career, life, parenting, these are small subsets. Your world changes when you tell stories.
Beautiful. Yes, I totally agree with you, but I'm sure that there is a story behind this story. So what is that story?
Indeed. So as you would know, I have a very different background. I often say that I grew up with the great Indian myth, which is that if you study hard, everything in life is going to be a cakewalk. My mom would tell me, I was this small, very, petite, and my mom would always tell me if I would have a fight with somebody, I would come home and complain, reply them with your scores. And I was always stayed up nights, crammed notes, did well, topped, exams a lot of times, went into ISI, which again is the most premium institute in my subject. So I somehow had this very straight, I think I was somewhere trying to combine, Sharma ji ka beta ka success and Sharma ji ki beti ka likability. So deadly combination, as you know. The cakewalk is slippery, so fell flat on my face when I was a young mom. That is around the time when I realized, until that time I was just going this straight horses blind wala highway. And around that time, as a young mom, something opens inside a trap door, and also things get very difficult to negotiate with, because there is a lot that goes on with women balancing children and careers together. And as an actuary, I had exams, so I was actually, I'm an actuarial leader by profession. I had a large team and all of that. So I had a huge burnout. Huge as in I was fainting on the road.
Oh, really?
I was waking up the next morning at home and wondering, how I came back home. I had a lot of episodes of, years of visiting dozens of doctors. Like, if I start talking about it, it would be like very long. But long story short, I was a step away from quadriplegia.
Okay.
Fibromyalgia was triggered in me, which is typically triggered either by something like a car accident or by a strong emotional trauma. So my stress and burnout was of that level.
Oh my God.
A whole lot of stuff happened, and the way modern medicine works, if they try to fix something, they break something else. So liver, cardiac, all of these things started to, like, it was a vicious cycle. And at one point the doctor told me that you will have to take a break, and I was like, how will I live if I do not work? And he said, how will you work if you do not live? It really came to that, and I have never imagined myself without having a very clear answer to the question as to who I am in my profession, or even as a child growing up being asked, what do you want to become? So I did not know who I am if I didn't work. And it was absolutely a void for me to wake up one day and realize I don't have office to go to.
I totally resonate.
Yes, knowing a little bit of your story, I imagine that you can imagine. The door would ring and it's like, why answer? Who cares? So I was in that space. Around that time, and almost in a haze, I wrote a short story, which was a little bit, I won't say autobiographical, but a little bit of me in it. Which then got made into a short film that was screened on at Cannes. Yes. My husband actually made it. He has always been in theatre. I kind of forced him into banking profession. Maybe he has been very creative. So he has he made it into a short film, and that kind of went off the roof because it gathered a lot of accolades, and more important than that, it was about womanhood, modern marriages, the urban loneliness nobody is talking about. And that triggered some conversations and made me suddenly wake up to this fact that, oh my God, I am not alone. It's not even just my story. It's like across continents, across culture, women are going through this inevitable void and thinking they are alone in it, because everybody, including myself, we are showing up on social media, photoshopping our pictures and posting about last night's dinner. And something is so intrinsically problematic about this.
Yes.
Of course, I am very blessed that my skills and my passion came together, because my passion was authentic story, but in terms of skills, I recall that, back in my early school days, I was a debater, I was elocutionist. So I had the voice as well as the writing skills. I didn't know the 2 + 2 becomes 4 until I came to this point. I think, I was made a certain way so that I could pursue it. But together I realized I have a strong cause, and I also have a strong grammar, because I was naturally a speaker and a writer.
Right.
So these two came together to do the work for me. So at Lighthouse, I do exactly that, help other people stand up and tell their honest, brutal, raw stories and find themselves through the process.
Very nice. So touching. Thank you for sharing that. So tell me a bit, not like you said, this world is all about social media and posting just the right things, because we are all having such right lives, and so and even if one is vulnerable, when you see the others, say in the best of spirits, you start feeling, okay, I'm alone. So am I even wanting to show up, because the space is not mine? So how do you help them?
Very beautiful question, Archana, and a very deep one.
Yes.
The thing is that first, to know that you are not the only one. I feel that is the biggest piece of it, to know that you are not the only one. None of us, we are unique, of course, we are very unique, we are uniquely talented, gifted, we are made in a certain way. So I'm not taking away the shine from anybody, but having said that, our raw emotions, raw fear, raw love, raw passion, raw primal instincts, and especially I would say, about instincts, our need to be seen, heard, understood
Yes.
for who we are is so raw that and so real that you cannot take it away. How I help people is by helping them show up and take away the shame of being somebody, just by by the simple raw truth that you know what, you are not alone in it. So I obviously try to lead by my own posts. I won't say by example, but by my own post. I'm sure there is a lot of filtering, there is a lot of saccharine. I'm sure I'm guilty as much as anybody else, but I try. I consciously try, because other than that, we are only down on a guilt trip and shame trip. There is a stain on our skirt and we think it's oh my God, we cower as women, as girls, young girls. It's not our cross to carry. And just this very small fact helps us to rise beyond ourselves. So I try to drive this with some of my personal stories, bring out through story prompts and through some deep NLP work, etc. I try to bring it out through the leaders or through the participants in my program. I ask them simple questions. Our raw truth doesn't always have to be depressive. It can be something really, it's something can be really funky, and something like, who were you at 8 years old? What did you think you want to do? Who were your best friends? So you start from there. You don't even have to always go into the dark, washing dirty linen in public and all. But you start. I think all that's important is to start telling our truth. And once we tell our truth, we are like, oh my God, who were we afraid of? These are all, paper tigers. Who's watching you? Nobody. I think these are basic realizations that come through.
Yeah. So like I was telling you that I have this beautiful space called Coffee Bean Retreats, which I do especially with my partner Sarika. And take women to a place where they spend time with themselves. And all we do is to let them unburden, let them talk about things they've never spoken before. And what happens in the process of what at least I have observed, and I think also Sarika feels the same, that the more that we are telling our story, the more that we are owning up to being who we are, the more it seems normal.
Yes.
And the biggest of things seem normal, isn't it? I mean, you must have made a lot of mistakes, but those mistakes are at that moment seeming right in some way, and there is some reason that you put behind it, but then you feel guilty about it through your life. Yes. I think once you start talking about it, once you start saying, okay, that yes, I own up to this, and then you feel, oh my God, people have stories to tell, and you say, oh my God, my story doesn't seem that great. There is so much going on here, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm so glad that you're in a space where you make leaders do that, to be honest, because I think once we have authentic and real leaders, will we have authentic organizations, right? So
as I'm speaking to you, actually, as I'm listening to you rather, Archana, I wish I was carrying a copy of Elixir, because when the book came out and when I was invited to a lot of book readings, etc., there was this favorite paragraph I would often read out, which is about, I of course don't remember it by heart, but my protagonist says this, that, we should all give ourselves permission to be clowns, to be crazy, to do something eccentric, to really be ashamed of ourselves the next morning, somewhere to ease up and feel lighter about ourselves, and we are specks of dust in this huge scheme of things. So somewhere that reminder also matters, that we take ourselves way too seriously and think our effort to be perfect is also a way of narcissism, like oh my God, can I do this? Who are we? Big deal.
So true. So tell me about the book. Since you mentioned the book, so again, how the book happened, why this title, what is in the book?
Oh, thank you so much. It's been a very long time since I answered that question, because the book came back so long back. It came out right after the movie. So I had an interesting book journey. It was a short story, then it was the script we co-wrote and was made into a short film, and then we came back from France, and we were attending a lot of screenings here in Calcutta, etc. So the movie won quite a few interesting awards across the world, and at one of the screenings, somebody walked up to me, like at the end of the screening, typically, me and my husband, we would stand and answer audience questions, and typically there were so many interesting questions around, womanhood, around vulnerability, around, loving reins, like there were many themes to the book. And somebody walked up to me, gave me his visiting card and said, would you want to write it into a book?
Wow.
And I was taken aback. I mean, I definitely at that point was in a place that, okay, before I die, maybe I would like to have a book. But I'm also very conservative. Like till this point in time, I never spent a rupee on marketing of the book, forget. I mean, in fact, even as an entrepreneur, I'm trying to like start paid marketing. So far things have been so organic, and I come from a very conservative mindset on that, you know, like I'm a recluse writer. Like I grew up on that idea of a writer who stays away and people follow them rather than they burn up the, so the thing is that so I was like, no, it's a traditional publishing, it's you know, a small media house, small publishing house called Readomania. So the book came out, and of course on the day of publishing it went up to number 3 on bestseller, but it stayed there for several months. And very interestingly, the Hindu, Kitab, that, Hindustan Times, Asian Age, Statesman, they all picked up and reviewed it, and I was like, wow. And they were drawing references to books that were written, you know, in the 18th, 19th century. The first book where maybe, you know, somebody wrote about, like I remember Kate Choplin's book, where she walks out of her apparently happy marriage because it wasn't enough for her womanhood. And people were making references to books like that. I wrote a literary fiction unknowingly that, you know, that it is even my style. So in my book, something, you know, a little you know, preview of the book would be that it's a woman just like myself. One day on her way back from her office to home, she casually walks into this new coffee shop that has opened, and she sits there, she asks for a cup of cappuccino and she asks for water.
Okay.
And there's this old waiter who comes and serves her water, but that's not water.
Okay.
That's elixir.
Oh.
That evening she comes back home and she goes to sleep. She does her usual stuff. She attends to the cook and everything else, you know, orders grocery. She goes to sleep, and as soon as she falls asleep, she wakes up in the coffee shop. And every day since that day, every time she sleeps, she wakes up where she left last night. And as an effect of that, she lives 2 lives. Every day she is living a parallel life through her dream, and she wakes up and that life continues as you know, as really for her as this. And at one point she doesn't know which life to choose, because essentially both the lives are as real for her.
Wow.
And then she's taken to a psychologist, you know, when her husband, you know, sees something is not quite right, etc. And then she asks the psychologist that, like, do you know where your mind goes when you fall asleep? Who are you to challenge, you know, my truth? And what if I can choose my truth? And what if, you know, so that essentially is the idea of what I was trying to navigate in my head, that, oh my God, you know, the world is like this, okay, fine, but can I try to build a stronger, more passionate inner world? And that was my expression.
But so, I mean, I'm thinking while you're saying also that how beautiful is this, because we actually do live 2 lives, don't we?
Oh yes.
And I think the beauty is when we can blend this and make it that one, the real one, and then we don't have to have a facade of anything else.
True. We definitely do live a life in our head very much, and especially, you know, I think everybody is creative, but people who own up to their creativity, I think they will own up to the fact that they definitely, you know, live a parallel life where they can go to when they need to. So that's what I tried to tap through the book.
So Sinjini, are you born creative, or did this happen because you spent some time dwelling into your own life and said, okay, let me just try something new?
You know this answer, I'm sure. Everybody is born creative. I'm sure you know this answer
No,
for
I
yourself.
want to hear this is second act, and I want more and
Everyone
more
is
people to know
creative,
that
yes.
we are all creative. Then why don't we discover our creativity?
We forget, I don't know why. I mean, as children, I mean, show me one baby who was there and saw a blank, forget paper or a drawing book, saw one blank wall and had access to a, you know, broken crayon and didn't color up the wall.
Yeah.
Show me one child who didn't do that. So we are all born creative. I don't know why we forget about it. I mean, it would be wrong to say I don't know. I forgot about it. I forgot all about it. I think, after I left my job, after I had that huge burnout and fell flat on my face, I suddenly was that, I was quite self-assured at 7, at 16, at 23. I mean, it's not just about being creative, but also being sure of yourself.
Yeah.
And very often, I'm sure as young girls, just passing out of school or in college days, there was some point in time when you were so sure of yourself. If you had to go and negotiate with a professor about some class timings, all the other boys in the class would chicken out and you would go forward. What happened to us?
Yeah.
And suddenly it's like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
That breaks open that thing. I'm sure everyone knows that they are born creative. If they are not, they're in denial. It's not that you have to get something from outside. It's only that you have to like as it's said about education, it's not about pouring in a bucket. It's about lighting a fire. It's already there. I'm getting it all wrong. It's about not filling up a bucket, but lighting a light so that whatever is there can be seen.
Yeah.
Creativity is very much like that. It's inside us. We have to light that fire and put the torch in and see where our pleasure and our passion and our purpose all come together.
So now I'm intrigued with this question that, while we were growing up, how this marriage thing is that when you go to somebody's house, you will need to change for them. We are conditioned to be that, right? You will be told that, now you'll have to manage household work as well. You'll have to have kids at a certain time. So you're again, getting ready for that. And in our mind, women are already preparing. So years go by, you do what you're supposed to do, and then you just forget about yourself. And then one fine day, when things are taking shape and then things are getting settled, kids are growing up, and then you suddenly realize, who am I?
Oh, yes.
So, who am I is that question I want to ask you, Sinjini. Who are you?
I am still searching who I am, for sure. I know who I am not.
Oh, that is more powerful.
That is very powerful. And trust me, in a very practical way. I'm sure, Archana, you would have faced this or realized this along your second act, because there were so many times, I mean, when you have a syllabus and a roadmap to follow, like of course, you studied this subject, these are the opportunities, you show up for the admission test or the viva, so that's one way. But when we were suddenly in our different points in time, me in my 30s, at various points in time when we started to give ourselves that permission for that second innings, so to say, there wasn't a ready path, so you could go anyway. And I definitely did not know where I was going, and I wouldn't be very sure I know it even now. I definitely know what gives me a lot of joy to do, and I'm sure I'll stick around as long as it gives joy. Can I promise for the next 40 years? I would rather not. But I very strongly know what it is not for me, because very practically, say for example, when I joined Toastmasters, I realized I love the fact that I could stand up and tell you a story. But then there are also parallel ladders which many people climb, and some people kept telling me that this is your next step, which is become this thing, small administrative leadership roles, then you get some tags and all. But I somehow knew in my gut it's not for me, so I didn't even go in it and get frustrated and come back. I very quickly knew, and this is still a tangible example. When as an entrepreneur, you meet many people, and I'm sure again, everything I'm saying, I think, I would see a mirror in your realization. Chemistry match or it doesn't.
Yeah.
Simple.
So true.
Simple.
So true.
And I have now started to believe so much, again, thanks to my Vipassana practice, my body now is a little more vocal than before. It speaks a little more strongly and assertively. I just know, like, okay, fine, good to meet, nobody is good, bad or something, but not meant to be together or meant to be together.
So true.
And that's so strong, and if I leave out, all that I am not, then I am left with all I am, maybe, over my lifetime, I'm sure I'll reach somewhere when I'm closer to that space. But I lead with discernment. I'm a huge fan of discernment. is my morality.
But thank you for answering that, because that really was a very beautiful answer.
And you know, I mean, it's actually my inner compass. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm not going. It's been very, very sure for me. I just know, and I have started to trust.
Yeah.
I always knew, but it took time to trust that voice.
Yeah, I again very, very relate to this, because when I started this journey on Second Act, I tried to trust people and then got disillusioned, and then I said, oh my God, this space is not for me, and then I just let the process follow. And then automatically what was meant for me kept happening. Yes. The right people keep coming. Yes. And the ones not meant to me were just getting away, aside on their own.
So true.
And I think it's all in the mind. If we just try to just run for something, all right, and we keep running without that intention, and we keep not getting it, we become like, oh my God, बहुत ही अफसोस, क्या हो गया मेरे साथ life में, मैंने क्या हो गया, you start feeling small about your own self. And I think once you just let go of that whole horde of like, achieving something with a goal, like you said, I think then everything happens.
I think I'm making up my answer here. But as we are speaking, I think there are easily 3 solid steps to it. One is knowing. We all know, because our body is very smart, and there is the brain in the liver is very, very strong. There is knowing. The second is trusting. Do I lead with that knowledge, or do I lead with my standard social checklist? कि इसके साथ तो मेरा collaboration होना चाहिए. These are the pros and cons. And the third thing is saying. That's hard. Like knowing, trusting, tak theek hai, inner work is saying. Just today, I was writing something where I wrote that, I'm not a very party person. And very often I get this question, अरे पिछले वो event में क्यों नहीं आए थे? या वो वाली party में क्यों नहीं आए थे? And so far I would be, for a long time I would say, I was unwell, I had fever, I had stomachache, I had cramps. And then at one point I was like, I had something in work, make it a little tentative so that, it's less on the degree of lies. And now I say, you know what, I don't enjoy a lot of large gatherings, I'm more of a one-to-one person. I say that.
Very nice.
And it took me so long to say that, like unwell, fever, बच्चों का कुछ ये वो मतलब अब कुछ बना लेते हो ना, वो बोलने में बहुत time लग जाता है.
I think once we come to this point in life, especially for women, I don't know how men feel. I think men don't feel this way because they also don't allow themselves to feel this way. I think women are getting more conscious about how they feel, what they should speak, what the space. I think once women at least are getting more smarter about what they want from this life or why they want this in this life, I think they just know their boundaries then.
Yes.
So then you say, okay, I'm going to invest my time into this. I'm going to invest.
And I have agency. I can choose. The fact that I have agency, कितना time लग जाता है वो पता होने में, मतलब कि I can choose not to go. यार होली है ठीक है, मजा मतलब आज इस साल नहीं खेलना है ठीक है, मतलब ये वाला like it's a huge thing.
And especially I think, and it doesn't matter what people say or do then.
People ना इतना सोचते भी नहीं, हम सोचते हैं ज़्यादा people को like as they say, वो फिर क्या सोचेंगे? आप अगर बैठ के सोच रहे हो कि वो क्या सोच रहे हैं तो फिर उनको तो मतलब हाँ they'll be jobless.
So you mentioned Vipassana, and I know that you went 7 times.
Yes.
7 times in how many years? Or 7 times was very
the first
quick.
time I went in 2016. So I have been to Vipassana every year at least once, and at times twice.
So people who are always thinking, once in your lifetime can you do Vipassana? Here is this person who's done 7 times
and you can see how talkative I am. So if I could do it, everybody can.
So then, firstly, why Vipassana? And why do you keep going back? What does it give to you?
Wow.
And it's such a hard, I would say it's really hard to be away and quiet for so long. Kudos that you can do it.
It's not hard. I don't know.
I don't believe it, but lots of people who don't do it, I'm just talking from them because I am myself a believer of that what you achieve in silence, you can never achieve.
Silence is huge. silence. I talk so much about pause when I talk about storytelling, and I teach storytelling, and a well-meant pause can do magic to your presence, your gravitas, so anyway, pause or silence is another topic. On Vipassana, Archana, very interesting that you asked that question. I come from a very atheist family. My parents are atheist. We never had a temple at home. And being from Calcutta, being a bong, the communist mindset. So somewhere we never had that kind of a culture at home. And it was almost a blasphemy for me when I arrived at a point when I had antidepressants and sleeping pills for such a long time, and the doctor then told me, you should start meditation. And for me, meditation was almost like a, how can I do meditation? Like, amn't I that atheist? And at that point, I started to try out everything that was there, and most meditations didn't make a clear difference between religion and spirituality. And religion is not a bad word. Organized religion is not something that I agreed with at that point in time, or even now. There is beauty in the literature of it, but again, we can talk like endlessly, that's not the subject. But I wanted something which is like, devoid of, which wouldn't need me to utter mantras and all. And somehow I didn't also get the fact how I can, shift my attention to something which is rote kind of a thing. So I had several problems, small or big problems with these things. And of course, a friend then suggested that, there is this kind, and I am like, this sounds like dream. And my daughter was very small around that time. It wasn't at all easy. I could only go in her summer vacations when I could leave her with my parents, and she would not eat for days. She would wet the bed when she was quite grown up. So there was a lot that, it was a hard decision, not easy at that point in time, especially because around that time I left my corporate and she was, used to seeing me around. But every time I went there, it feels almost, I would be ashamed if I hadn't done my work. I almost forgot I have another life to go back to.
Yes.
I mean, it felt like when I'm there, I'm that person. And every time I go back in 6 months or 1 year time, it feels like I went for a vacation to my other more civic social life. But this is more me. So if I can do that, then number of times, like why so less should be the question, not how so many times. So it's
that,
home.
oh my goodness.
It's home.
When I did 9 days of silence, it's called Samyama, and I think it's slightly tougher than Vipassana because you're given a mat and that is your space to sleep, and that's your space to meditate, and you stay with 3,000 people in a room. And you're not supposed to engage with like no verbal, no nothing. So you have to keep your eyes down, and then you only have to be aware of the sound. So there's no watch, there's no time, there is nothing that for 9 days. They take away everything. So you're so right. Like the first 1 hour is like, okay, where have I reached? And from the next hour, you feel this is who I am. This is my life.
Yes.
And I'm so disconnected. And you feel, oh my goodness, if one can do this in a living life, right? Imagine how beautiful that life will be, because that
and how little you need.
How little you need. Yeah,
you need nothing. Like you live out of a suitcase, and you can after 10 days or after 8 days for that matter, I'm sure if you had to continue for another length of time, the same set of clothes or the soap or the shampoo would serve you. So then you come back and you are like, this so much trash, this so much excess. Yeah.
Yeah, and that time it seems, oh my God, I want to run away, and then you crave to go back. So I just know what you're feeling, and like I'm so happy you can do this.
No, I'm happy for you, and it's what you described right now sounds so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful space, needless to say. So what have your learnings from life been through your life?
I am about to turn 42, so perhaps a little soon to answer that question, but then I am also reminded in a funny way that 42 is the meaning of life and universe by the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes.
So 42, I mean I'm just trying to link it back. I don't know. I don't want to conclude too soon. I just want to follow my nose. I just want to follow my nose, stay curious, stay open. I want to change for better, but in large parts I am very happy with who I am right now and who I am being right now. So yeah, I don't want to answer that question too soon for myself. But I don't have, as I was sharing with you, I don't have, and I have almost become an advocate of this fact that I don't have a big, hairy, audacious goal. I don't believe in that. I believe in the process. And every morning as I wake up, not very consciously, but I have gotten into a habit of doing a check-in. Like I very quickly realize when things are off, because of course, after having done meditation for so long, you kind of, have a stronger sensory angle to the body. And I do check-in, but I am not in a rush to come over feeling sad or feeling angry or something. So I try to stay in the space and observe. I'm just trying to improve my process. I don't have a destination, and I don't believe too much in the destination. In 20 years I will look like this, and this is the house I'll live in by the sea and all of that. I just believe that, it's the process every day now. That's
so one question I really like to ask women especially, and that is that, have you seen yourself changing in front of your own eyes?
Yes. If I see my pictures from 5 years back, I look much more waxed than, how emotions show up on my skin, on the face. I think I'm clearly much more like, even a still face looks more lively now than how I looked when I was like, maybe, in my day job, living life by the rules. So yes, absolutely, absolutely. I'm sure you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. It shows on the face. I love this, there was this line in Stepmom, the film, which said that, you can only tell that many lies until it shows up on your face. And I feel it's not only lies, it's also authenticity, truth, everything. So it shows up on the face, and somehow you can read faces. We don't allow ourselves, but even still pictures give away so much.
So true.
You see that.
So nice, yes. Okay, so this is a interesting podcast on second act. And of course, this question has to come up. What do you make of second act, and what is your second act?
My second act is now. My second act is very much now, because I am in a beautiful space where I realized that there were certain things I was always complaining about. My teachers complained about I am too talkative. I would hide storybooks in my textbooks and read when my mom is trying to believe that I'm studying. And suddenly everything shows up as who I am. Like, because I am that person is why I am this person today. And my mission is to bring hearts to work, because as a corporate person and as a woman, and especially as a young mother around that phase, I have had many lunches alone. I have often been the last person left in the room, capping the markers, while all the men took each other by the shoulders and walked away. And somewhere I feel that emotional intelligence is big deal, and it's so urgent. And especially now with everything we are talking about technology, technology can do so many things that humans used to do before. I say that often, the only way left to be human is to be human. And to be human is to tell your story, because what are we without our lived experience that makes us so unique and so reflective, so introspective. So I definitely feel that if decisions are driven by stories, if your life is driven by stories, your self-esteem, your negotiation, your interpersonal networking, everything practical as well as philosophical as well as psychological is led by stories. Biological, I would even say, because the stories you tell essentially make up for, your, like the brain, gives this transmit. So essentially that's something that's so solid that I am quite fairly sure that this is a second act that is going to stay. It's not going to go away. It can change format, I can become more or do different things, but this is something so solid and this is so true to be able to infuse that force and be the evangelist and create more thought leaders, create more evangelists, create more honest, truthful leaders, and build that change in the boardroom is totally my second act, and I feel so strongly about it. You wake me up at 2 in the morning, I'll start talking about it. So I'm going to do that for a while now, I guess.
Super. So thanks, Sinjini, and of course I have some few rapid fire questions.
Sure.
And that just makes us know you a little bit more.
Sure.
So is there a book that you're writing again?
I'm so ashamed. I have shelved so many manuscripts, fiction as well as non-fiction, but definitely I do plan to write something more related to storytelling, which will help people who I cannot help directly. So a little bit of a workbook style where I give them the why but also show them the how, yes. So I want to definitely do that, but I have shelved so many manuscripts in the last few years, I'm very ashamed of myself.
Yeah, may you get more time and may you be able to do much more than what you have achieved so far. And
Yes.
I'm waiting for your next book anyway.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so one value that you've held so far that has made you who you are?
Discernment. I just ask myself, do I want to do this before I do this? I think I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am not, as we discussed. So so descriptively between the two of us, I think discernment is a very solid and easy thing. Are you having fun? No, don't do it. Simple. Yeah. I think it makes life simple for me every day.
And what is that one thing that you've shed off during time
I've shed off.
to be yourself?
Pleasing people, the courage to be disliked. This is the title of a book which I have fallen in love with. So it is the philosophy of a psychologist called Adler, and the title of the book is The Courage to be Disliked. I could say the joy of missing out, because I very consciously nowadays, like there was a time, Archana, I am sure you would agree, during the lockdown, you see a form and you jump to fill it up. I could fill it up in my sleep. There's so many webinars, everything sound good, you just join everything, and then by the end of it, it's like, wait, I already knew this, or maybe I know this better, and then what are you doing? So
Yeah.
I have stopped. I have just told myself,
Same here.
if you don't get a full bodied yes, if you don't have a very strong reason to do something, don't do something.
So true.
And I had a full bodied yes for today. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. I was going to ask you, but the very fact that you're sitting here, you came all the way, you made this effort.
I'm very glad I did. I'm very
so
glad I
Thank
did.
you. That means a lot. Okay, so one thing that you want to leave us with in this podcast to the people who are hearing us and seeing us today, what you want to say?
One thing I want to say to everybody, whoever I meet and whoever cares to listen, is that individualize yourself. The world is shifting very fast, and we being replicas of each other through the institutes we passed out from, even the Ivy Leagues, if that is the case, the CV, the curriculum, all of those things are getting replicated by machines very fast. I'm not here to scare you, or I'm not a big, I'm not like taking a value judgment here, but individualizing yourself is that one shot you have to make better sense of yourself, as well as have better value for society, life, work, career. Having a very good reason of doing what you are doing is going to make a lot of difference. I think that could be definitely, if you're in a place of, you don't have to leave your job and start doing something else, but whatever you are doing, individualize yourself. And the best way I know is to tell your stories, show up on social media, you post about last night's dinner, party, clothes, festivals. Talk about the time, your grandmom told you a story. Talk about a time the car tire punctured. Like, you don't even need a huge, you don't have to cross the English Channel, or you don't have to climb the Everest. We have stories every day. Just start there, and you will automatically see how you are humanized, how you are individualized, and how people also feel you are safe to talk to, because you are open and authentic and vulnerable. So people also come back and tell you their honest, genuine, authentic truths. It changes the game. Try that.
So beautiful. So the thing that I will take away from this is that to be human, you have to be human.
Yes.
Yeah, so thanks, Sinjini. It was a very
My
beautiful
pleasure.
podcast, and
My
thank
pleasure.
you so much for being here and coming. Really.
Thank you, Archana. Thank you for the important work you are doing.
Oh, fills my heart with joy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye. So this is yet another incredible episode of Discover Your Second Act. I'm hoping that as me, you are feeling very, very excited, enthusiastic and learned about all the nuggets that came out. So follow us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, and of course, until next time, keep discovering your second act.